Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 48 of the Iga and Carlos Tennis Show. This is our Australian Open preview, and we're going to be previewing the men's draw, women's draw. We're going to be talking about, Carlos' section, Iga's section, all the other players, and yeah, it's this very soon after we've done our previous episode. So y'all will have two episodes this week to listen to.
Yeah, don't get used to that sort of frequency. Also, I have to say that Vansh has been very excited about this Australian Open draw, so I'm glad that I get to preview it with him. I actually don't really know it all that well, to be honest. So it's gonna be helpful that hopefully me, you, Vansh, we get this visual tool on our screens here.
Yep, for those of you watching on YouTube, you should be able to see on the left hand screen the draw as I go through all the different sections. So we're going to start with the first section. Actually, before we start, it's important to know that Sinner and Alcaraz are on the opposite halves of the draw. And so we're basically with Sinner, Sinner top seed. He will draw number 4 seed Taylor Fritz in the semis if the seeds hold accordingly. And then the bottom half will be Alcaraz and Zverev. And so I think in some ways that's good because we could have been in a situation where Alcaraz, Djokovic, Sinner are all in the top half, and then if you know, you'd have to basically get through two of the three major contenders to get to the final, and then we don't know who's in the bottom half. But in some ways, I actually like this because it's a little bit more balanced.
Uh, really? I mean, I don't know. Let's say, for example, Tennis Abstract's ELO rankings, they also have these projections, right? Jeff has these projections on his site where you've got forecasts, basically a
Yeah.
percentage chance of how likely is it that said player is gonna get to this round, this round, this round, and the title. And after the
Yeah.
draw, the projection for Sinner is 65.7%, I think, that he's gonna win the title. So, well, that's not too balanced, let's just say.
Yes, I will just say it could have been worse. At the same time, I definitely agree that Sinner has a very comfortable draw in terms of, it's very hard to imagine him not getting to the final with the draw that he has and the players in front of him. Whereas you can't really say that on the bottom half. But nonetheless, let's look at his section. So he draws Nicholas Jari first, and the seeds in his section are Kabuli and Hurkacz and Runa. So what do you think about this section overall? Obviously, somewhat trickyish first round match, but someone who's really going to come at him with a lot of power. But certainly somebody that Sinner should get through pretty comfortably in the end. Maybe he drops a set, but yeah, what are you kind of looking for here in terms of the other matchups or for Sinner?
Yeah, it's kind of funny how we look at Sinner right now and his draws because Jari is one of the highest ranked unseeded players. He's obviously also one of these guys who just comes at you with a lot of pace and doesn't really allow you to play your game. But everybody's just like, no, I mean that doesn't really matter. There's no unseeded player that's gonna stop Sinner. And then also you have Hurkacz and Rune in this very competitive section. Hurkacz also has one of the toughest unseeded opponents in the opening round. Berrettini is also one of the toughest unseeded opponents, and he can play Rune in the second round. So you've got some very strong contenders there, but we're not looking at that section as this is where Sinner might fail. This is the fourth round, one of these guys they can beat Sinner. We are mostly looking at them as okay, these are the guys who really lost during this Australian Open draw because they have Sinner in their fourth round. So that's kind of you could definitely go the other way and just think, okay, so Yannick has a tricky fourth round. But at least based on what he was doing last year, we just hold him in such high regard at the moment that everybody is just saying, yeah, he's in the final. We'll see if that actually happens. But yeah, he's a big favorite, even if that fourth round is especially that bottom part of this section is just so exciting. Many good matches in there. One of the players that will arrive in the fourth round from this, they should be relatively, pumped and try to beat Sinner and probably fail. I don't think Berrettini will do Wimbledon here. So push Sinner for four very close sets or something like that. Hurkacz is probably also a couple of months away from being at the peak of his powers again. Rune is Rune. I would like to probably I would like to see Sinner Rune though, just for the sake of this matchup, kind of impressing us already a few times. Maybe it would be the same, but yeah, it just seems like Yannick should be able to cruise to the quarterfinals.
All right, yeah. And yeah, the interesting first round match is Hurkacz Griekspoor. That has sort of 5 sets, three tie breaks, something like that written all over it. And yeah, and then same thing with yeah, like you said, her Berrettini, Runa, Hurkacz, any of these guys, hopefully. we do see an exciting fourth round match for Yannick. But let's go to the second section where we have Tsitsipas and Mickelson. Right away, that's an interesting first round, and then we've got Landalusa qualifying. We've got seeds like Cerundolo and Diminor in the bottom half. This is the only quarterfinal. This is the only major quarterfinal that Diminor hasn't reached yet so far. He's always played pretty well down under. Is this a good chance for him to do it? And what do you think about his chances to get to the quarters? And I already kind of, if he does get to the quarters, we know how bad that matchup is against Yannick.
Yeah, if he does get to the quarters, that's one quarterfinal I'm not going to be watching and only tune in if it's getting interesting. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's a great chance. The seed that he got from that, well, he is the number 8, right? So the seed he got from that 9-12 segment is Tsitsipas, who is currently about a 50-50 on hard courts in the last year or so. And that is something that I'm not really, like very confident that he's going to even get to that fourth round. This is another very poor head-to-head for Alex. But again, Steph has to get there first, and it's been evening out a little bit over the past 2 years. And just generally speaking, with how consistent the Australian has been in slams, of course, 3 consecutive quarterfinals. You look at this section, you're thinking, yeah, I mean, he probably gets there again. He probably just makes the fourth round, beats whoever is there, and loses to Sinner. Like the Minor's event seems very predictable just before the just before it begins. It just seems like he is, everybody knows who he's gonna beat and everybody knows who he's gonna lose to. Of course, it's just sports, it's tennis. It can provide some surprises, but this isn't looking like a very exciting section in that sense. But one loss from a favorite, either Sinner or the Minor, it's gonna be then suddenly just complete turmoil and anything can happen. So, but yeah, I mean, I like Alex's chances here. I think this is one of the better draws generally he could have gotten in terms of the section. Of course, not in terms of the quarterfinal opponent.
Yeah. I feel actually quite tempted to pick Tsitsipas to get through here if he does get through the Mickelson match, only because he has a 19 and 2 head-to-head combined against Diminor and Hachanov. I think he's like 11 and 1 against
Yeah.
Diminor. Like you said, Diminor got the win over him last
How
year
about
in Madrid.
Landalusa?
And yeah, Landalusa in the second round is tricky, but I don't know if he's quite ready to win best of 5 against Tsitsipas yet. If Tsitsipas is in good form, like we know he can be in Australia, but well, I think the Mickelson match will tell us a lot because if he, yeah, puts up with the kind of performance he's been putting up lately, that doesn't give me much hope against in the first round. At the same time, though, um, yeah, I agree with everything you said about Diminor, and he's probably the safe option.
Yeah, I think we've had a few events like this already where we're kind of thinking, okay, so this could be where Tsitsipas gets some form back. This is a draw that he should be able to capitalize on, and it just isn't working out. So I guess I'm gonna believe it when I see it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, technically, of course, he's very capable of getting to the quarters here. Likely won't matter much whether Sinner plays him or Alex in the quarters, but yeah, I mean, he's also a contender for sure.
all right, then let's go to this section. How long has it been since we've seen Jensen Brooks be in a draw, by the way? But that's been almost a couple of years, I would say. And obviously here you've got, this is like the all American section because you've got, Fritz, Brooksby, you've got Shelton, Nakashima, you've got Musetti at the bottom. I think personally this is the most interesting section, not just because of the Americans, but also, the all Italian matchup at the bottom. You got Shapovalov who could make some noise potentially. You have, Fritz, Pericard, potential third round. I think this is maybe one of my most favorite sections.
Be true to yourself, Vash. Be real. I mean, you're only saying this because the Americans, but no, it's fine. Yeah, it's fun. There's a lot of these, like as you said, fratricidal contests. You've got Monfils, Becci Pericard too. Becci Pericard very dangerous here probably. The first 2 rounds look very nice for him. So if he plays Taylor in the third round, I mean, that's exactly who you don't want to face as one of the top seeds. Taylor also has a good draw to the third round, by the way. Like, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that the seeds will hold up there. So maybe the bottom part of this section is the one that's like far more exciting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Simply the fact that the seeds aren't as strong and they are actually facing some tough opposition. Shelton already with Nakashima, but even like Carreño Busta or Markshak second round, that's not super easy. And of course, Musetti can easily lose to Arnaldi on hard courts. Bautista Agut, Shapovalov, also a matchup we've seen plenty, but either of them can be very dangerous. So maybe it's like the bottom half of this section that I would agree that it's very exciting. The top of it is just honestly quite boring because the seeds will probably hold up. But yeah, bottom is great. Generally speaking, I do have a lot of like respect for Taylor in terms of like being able to get to just latter stages of events at the moment. But this isn't easy. Like after the first two rounds, it seems like the pressure will really be on him. And there's a lot of players from the third round onwards who can take the game to him and potentially even beat him. So it's not an obvious one. I guess it's, kind of like both positive and negative for Fritz because the first two rounds look amazing. However, after that, it's clear that he might be in trouble in every match unless like Becci Pericard loses early.
Of course, for me, the dream scenario here would be Brandon Nakashima getting to the fourth round. So if that
Why
happens,
just the fourth round, Vansh? Why just the fourth round?
yeah, I mean, let's let's take it one step at a time. But against Shelton,
Alcaraz Nakashima final.
yeah, exactly. What do you think about his chances against Shelton? Obviously, that seems like more of a lottery match to me. I mean, they played twice before this, and it was like all three tiebreaks. And where Ben is at right now, it seems like more or less 50-50.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess I don't really know where Ben is at right now. We've just had the off season. He only had the what one match in Auckland, or was it? Yeah, just one match in Auckland, right? Against Menchik. So, let's just say a slightly a similar prospect to him, and probably a slightly better one than Brandon. So yeah, I guess I just don't know where Ben is. Ben isn't the kind of guy who wins matches 3-0 at the slams, but actually 2 years ago he was like blasting through his opponents here in Australia, right? So that level, that ability is somewhere in him. Hopefully he recovers this year because of course last year he wasn't making all of these slam runs, or at least the slam runs that he made, they didn't come as easily, the three consecutive five setters at Wimbledon. So if we see the same sort of like very serve-oriented Shelton from last season, then certainly yeah, any match he plays really is already a bit of a lottery, kind of like, Pecci Pericard fashion. So I think Shelton Nakashima, yeah, there's a very real chance for the underdog. I honestly, okay, I mean, this is gonna be a little out there, but like Kamil Majchak could make the third round here, and I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I really wouldn't. So, it just shows you how this section can get really wild.
Yeah, um, for sure. This is the like I said, the bottom half, and then over here, of course, the match that everyone is going to be watching and talking about, Rublev Fonseca. Of course, this is the Medvedev section as well. You've also got a potential Medvedev Tien in the second round if that happens, which is going to be a great experience for Lerner. And then you've also got seeds like Tiafo. So Tiafo, you got Stan as well, who's like the oldest player in the draw, and yeah, you got other qualifiers as well. So what do you think about this section overall? Because yeah, already the first match is so tantalizing.
I mean, yeah, the first match is the best in the draw, that's for sure. We were obviously like when the draw was released, we didn't know where Fonseca was gonna land. Rublev was probably the toughest option. Then he lands into this one, and you're like, oh, he got Rublev. That's horrible. And you start thinking about it, and you're like, actually, if it wasn't best of five, that would be like a 50-50 match right now. So we'll see. It's very tough to kind of like determine how strong that factor of a longer match is, the physical intensity of Rublev that Joao hasn't really faced before, because, well, we're just working on very limited info. The only five setters he's played was next gen finals, and that's, of course, a very different system. Even that very long match against Menchik was like 2 hours 20, I think. So I don't really know, but like the chance is there. Sabov Wild, who's also in this section, by the way, he was like slamming Rublev around the court with his forehand for 2 sets last year. Andre really doesn't have like too much ability to mix up play, change pace, and everything. So maybe sometimes when the opponent is redlining, he might be in trouble. And he's also not that strong at the moment. Also, Marozsan is in this section and just beat him in Hong Kong, and that's a similar kind of like path to victory as potentially maybe Fonseca could take. So this one is just completely wild if Joao beats Andre, I think. And Medvedev, there's also questions, right? Like if it was Medvedev from last year, if I was as confident in Daniil as I was last year, I would say he probably makes the quarterfinals without that much of a hassle. Then again, even last year it was 5 sets against Rusuvori. He almost lost that match. But yeah, I mean, if I was very confident about Daniil at the moment, I would probably go just, he's in the quarters, or like almost he's in the quarters. But there are some concerns right now. Like, I don't think he's going to lose to Cassidy Samre, but Popyrin right now, he had a very good second half of the season, pushed some great players at the slams. Of course, 3 matches with Djokovic, won one of them. I don't know. It's just really a question of like what sort of Medvedev we see, how the shoulder has recovered. Of course, he didn't take, he didn't play any warm up. And I saw some on Twitter, some people were saying that, oh yeah, that's just because he's become a father again. But like last
Yeah.
year, he also didn't have a warm up, so I'm not really sure that's changed his strategy at all.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm very
there's
interested to
just
see
doubts.
What Medvedev does in terms of tinkering with his game. He's been asked over and over again about what he has to change to try to compete against Sinner, Alcaraz, and Rikes, and how the head-to-head is flipped and stuff. Is he going to add more power? Is he going to experiment with the strings again? Is he going to go back to just is the shoulder better now? Is he going to start serving like he did in 2021? Those are all questions
You
that I
already
have in
did
mind.
a lot of good work in terms of that, right? Just like last year, improving the ability to return closer to the baseline. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe it's
Um,
about that serving if he recovers that.
Yeah, because I think from the baseline he's always just going to get outpowered and outmuscled by Sinner and Alcaraz for the most part, and they're just better athletically than him even now. And Medvedev's getting up there in terms of his age as well. I mean, he's not the oldest guy, but he's also not the youngest anymore. I think he's going to be like 29 this year in February. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'll probably end up still picking him to the quarters just because I have a lot of respect for his hardcore prowess. But yeah, that Popper match is definitely one to circle.
Yeah, I
And then
would pick him. I would pick him too. Yeah,
yeah,
just not
and then
with much confidence, compared to last year.
yeah, fair. And then now we have the bottom half, and right away, yeah, this is the match that if you watch the Talking Tennis, drive bar, draw live draw show. I'm like slurring because I'm so excited to get this out of the way. But like Nishesh and Novak, because we were talking so much in the past. I had tons of conversations this week with people who were comparing him to Novak, and a lot of people see a lot of similarities in terms of the tools that they have in their game and stuff. And now you get to see it side by side, basically, when they take the court against each other. I'm assuming in uh, 2 days' time. So
I mean, it's gonna be pretty fun to see them just sort of, as I said on Twitter, mano a mano, and just next to each other because there's been many comparisons. He kind of modeled his game around about after Novak. The two-hander in general, the redirection ability, the fact that he returns so aggressively as well. Like, yeah, there are a lot of similar elements, but as we discussed last night on another show, I think the tactical approach and how these elements are used by both players is completely different. And in a way, it's not the same play style at all. They just have similar tools that they decide to use in a completely different manner. But I'm not too excited for this match in terms of just like the scoreboard or whatever. I don't think it's going to be a great, well, it's going to be a great experience for Nishash to play Novak. Perhaps for the last time. We don't know how Novak is going to be, how long Novak is going to be on the tour. But I don't think it's really like an extremely tough match for Novak in the long run. But it's definitely a draw that catches your eye, and if someone knew about all of these comparisons beforehand, then yeah, this is the one we've been waiting for. And in fact, in Brisbane already, we were one match away from that happening, right? When Nishish lost to Gal.
yep. And this is also you got Riley Opelka in the third round. You got Thomas Mahach. Two players who've had Djokovic's had wins over Djokovic in the last 1 year. Obviously, Opelka with the incredible run in Brisbane in all his matches, not just Novak. But he's coming in with some injury concerns with the wrist and the back as well. Then you had Mahach who retired against Fritz and was super close to winning, and he had a little bit of a meltdown towards the end there. He's had some cramping issues, but the talent is so undeniable, and I almost feel like shot for shot, talent for talent, he can go toe to toe with Djokovic. I have some questions for sure about the, whether he'll be able to rise to the occasion mentally and stuff, but physically, tennis wise, I don't have many questions. Whereas for Opelka, I wonder if that style that he just played against Djokovic, that redlining that he was able to do on the forehand, and the way he was able to sustain that high quality baseline tennis, that just doesn't seem conducive to working over best of five all the way. And it seems like a really really awesome day, but I don't know if he can replicate that and even get to the Novak match right now.
Well, I mean, in Brisbane, what was that match sort of? He wins the first set in a tiebreak, right? And then in the second, he gets that one break. He gets two sets up. He gets two sets up on Novak here. He probably does the job in the next three at some point, like kind of some query-ish style at Wimbledon 2016, where also everybody was saying that, okay, this is done because Novak is now going to come back. But but somehow still like, you've got these three sets for a serve bot. There's gonna be chances, or serve bot in quotes. Anyway, yeah, I think for Opelka and Mahach, the sad part is that there are injury concerns for both of them at the moment. We don't really know what sort of physical state they will reach Melbourne in. But if they are like on top of their games, I would love to see that third round, regardless of which player it is. Opelka or Mahach, it's going to be a tough one for Djokovic in the third round if they are 100%. And there's also Lehečka in here. I remember picking Iji Lehečka to beat Novak Djokovic at the US Open. Of course, he didn't even get to that much. However, I had my reasons there for like believing that Novak wasn't gonna be that motivated, or like, yeah, isn't gonna have the same drive intensity, which happened. It just happened against Popyrin, not against Lehečka. And here I don't have the same doubts about Novak, I suppose. If there are some doubts, they might be coming from, different parts. So like age decline and etc. And that's something we're just going to sort of have to monitor. But I would probably just still stick to Novak as my, winner pick in this section or whatever. But Lehečka is someone I have on my mind. Obviously, he's always starting his season well in Australia. I love the fact that after winning Brisbane, he did not decide to like, chase his title defense in Adelaide. He just is focusing on this one now. Of course, last year he kind of learned the hard way that after winning Adelaide the week before the Australian Open, he didn't have enough for the slam, and he was defending his quarterfinal points then. So yeah, I think he's the favorite to get to the fourth round. I really like his opening two rounds, obviously. Dimitrov, he's got a good head-to-head against him. We'll see. But yeah, I'm not really sure that I have the same doubts about Novak as I had at the US Open.
Yeah. I'm going back and forth on this, but I am very tempted to pick Mahach to beat Djokovic in the third round. Like I just, you know, maybe I'll go for it. Maybe I won't.
And I'm tempted by Lehečka, so either
Well, yeah,
check basically.
and I could see a situation where like Lehechka takes advantage of you know
Okay.
pulling
Hmm.
out the upset, and then like a couple days later maybe he throws in a bit of a stinker. Like I could see that happen, and Lehechka's on top of his game or something like that. I could definitely see Lehechka to the quarters. Like there's a path there for sure.
Yeah, or like Mahach just plays Novak and kind of softens him up in a way.
Hmm.
Well, it's there. I mean, Roland Garros style, kind of like, I mean, five sets with Musetti, long match with Cerundolo, and then maybe there's some vulnerability that wasn't there before. Who knows?
Yep, and then now we've also got Alcaraz. So you can see we're going to focus a lot on this because we've got Alcaraz and Djokovic potential quarterfinal. But before that, Alcaraz has got Shevchenko. He's got potentially Jordan Thompson. Could be Nuno Borges. Could be Alexander Muller. Any of these guys really. Could be even Kupfer, honestly. But probably you're looking at Shevchenko. The first two rounds don't seem like too much of a problem for me. Shevchenko obviously had that one good win at the United Cup over Steph, who wasn't feeling his best, but um, you know, Shevchenko, like sometimes he has a great backhand day, he has a good backhand down the line. I don't really see the kind of weaponry that would really, you know, make Alcaraz stressed in a situation like this. So I think this is like a draw that he can use to work his way into the third round at least.
Yeah, I like this draw for Carlos early rounds for sure. It just doesn't feel like to me any of these guys can beat him in a best of five scenario, especially when he will have so much time to potentially adjust, adapt to their games, maybe settle with some, early nerves. Shevchenko, yeah, again, he is a player who sometimes surprises you. Okay, he probably doesn't have the best win rate on the ATP Tour right now, but he gets these top 20, top 10 wins sometimes. I just feel like that's a big jump to go from that to a best of five win over Carlos still. Even if, of course, last year we saw that Carlos had like, better and worse performances in conditions like this in Melbourne. And Nishioka Dugas, that's kind of same story again. I don't even think Thompson, Kepfer, Miller, Borges, like that's honestly not even that tough for me. So I think it's mostly like this. If we're looking at this section, we are mostly thinking of how good are Korda, Draper, maybe even Kokinakis going to be in the forefront. Like that's maybe the key matchup of this section for Alcaraz for me. Also, just like generally speaking, yeah, it's not an amazing Australian Open draw for Carlos, that's for sure. The fact that the early rounds are great, that's great. That's definitely easy. But then you have Djokovic in the quarters, Zverev in the semis. It's gonna take a while to even get to Yannick Sinner in the final, and by that
Mm.
point, who knows? But yeah, the first few rounds, I think they should be relatively okay. Like if he's dropping sets, there's gonna be a lot of time to recover.
Yeah, for sure. And then you've got, potentially Lucas Klein versus Korda. That's one of them circling only because Klein played so well here last year, and I think he just loves these conditions, and he just hitting the crap out of the ball for like 5 sets against Zverev, and seemed like the better player throughout most of the time actually.
Or now we're
So
gonna get
that's a good matchup.
demonetized.
Um, but honestly, because Korda, he makes the Australian Open quarters 2 years ago, but he's not been on a deep slam run since, and he's exactly the kind of player that gives you some confidence a week before a major, or I guess during the grass season. Mostly we look at him as like, oh, you should make a Wimbledon semi, you should make a Wimbledon quarter, and mostly it's just health related, but sometimes it's also just he underperforms in the early rounds of slams, and I just with this draw, I'm just become very cautious about Seb Korda lately this year. And I used to be like so high on him for the last 5 years. But
He actually replied to a tweet from Alex Graskin today, who was saying that like Korda constantly does this, a week before a slam, he just ropes me back in with his talent. And I very much agree, obviously I
mm,
am a Sebi Korda, I
mm,
enjoy it. Like his game when he's on is just so smooth and just technically one of the most sound on the planet. However, the problem is that what you said, yeah, he just loses in the opening rounds of these of these slams where he performs well the week before. Of course, maybe Adelaide is going to be different. He hasn't played since the US Open. He's definitely well rested, if anything. And also, Adelaide, I mean, he's only played what, 4 sets to get to the final so far. So maybe this one can be different. Klein is relatively dangerous in the opening round. Yeah, it's not quite Petri Pericard at Wimbledon, which is what Korda ended up losing to, of course. But it is a dangerous round one opponent. I do feel pretty confident though that if Korda is just in good physical shape, if he beats Klein, the opportunity to play Draper in the third round is very much there. It would be like a 50-50 for me, considering Jack was also recently not maybe injured is a stretch, but like struggling with something and everything.
yeah. So yeah, Jack's fitness is also going to be a question mark, and also that test of the second round against Kokonakis, who just plays like 40% better in Australia and in front of packed crowds, and also best of five early. He's always involved in some epics, so I could see definitely Kokonakis Draper going the distance, and then that should tell us a lot more about where Jack is at. But overall, I like Carlos's chances to get to the quarters, and then after that, it's very, very tough. But if it's Mahach, if it's Lehechka, that will be a break for sure.
Well, Thomas Mahach, Shanghai.
Yes, for sure. But I don't know if I have that much faith that Mahach can actually beat Djokovic, Lehechka, and Alcaraz to get to the semis. Like I'm not quite there with
Yeah, me
him yet.
neither.
I'm a super big believer. But so if it is Alcaraz Mahach, I'd definitely be picking Alcaraz. If it's Alcaraz Djokovic and Djokovic is rounding into form, and then all of a sudden it's a different story. But um, yeah, and then there's question marks for both, but mostly for Novak, right? Because how is he going to um, you know play the kind of tennis that he played at the Olympics on this kind of a court and in best of five? So you have all those questions as well. But I think there's gonna be a lot of people that will think I'm crazy for picking Wahaj in the third round, or just
Have you
not.
decided already?
I think I might just run with it. I think I'll pick
Okay.
Mahaj in the quarters. I have Alcaraz and Mahaj.
Maybe I'll stick to my Lehechka beating Djokovic prediction and just say that, it was a slam too early, but I'm gonna follow up on that.
But now I'm also kind of questioning, backing it up against Lehechka in the fourth round. So I could see either Lehechka or Mahaj in the quarters. But
Yeah,
I'll stick with Mahaj right now because I'm a believer.
I
I
guess
like
it
the way he
might
plays.
make the quarterfinals for Carlos a little easier. Djokovic, as much as we kind of, well, might have different opinions, and everybody has a different opinion on whether he can still win slams and how close he is to that slam winning level. But it's still like, it's still easier to play someone like Lehechka or Mahac than just mentally than Novak again.
Yeah. How about this section? Because you have the Paul Rudd section again, and they seem to always fall in each other's section or quarter in these slams. But I mean, this is not an easy draw for Casper because Munar is playing some of the best tennis of his career, I believe, right now, and he's going to make it physical. I don't think he's going to beat Rude, but I think he can definitely make it tough, like physically. And then also, you have Basilashvili, who's just, I don't know where at all where he's at in his game, but like he came through qualifying rather comfortably, right? If I'm not mistaken. And
Yeah,
then Menchik,
didn't drop a
you know,
set.
most talented players in the world for sure, and one of the brightest prospects. And then you've got Shang as well, who has just such a high ceiling. And then you've got Felix, who's playing some of the best tennis right now, has wins over Fritz and Paul. And maybe the whole Adelaide thing, maybe he won't be able to convert it to a good Australian Open. That's entirely possible, but he's definitely playing better than we saw for basically all of last year. And then you've got Nishikori, Paul here, Stricker. I don't know. To be honest, I think I'm most confident in picking Tommy to get through this section, just based on this. I also really liked what I saw from Casper at the United Cup, but then I also know there's a lot of tough opponents in front.
Yeah, Kasper, he was very aggressive again at the United Cup, kind of just like the start of 2024, where maybe the Australian Open wasn't perfect for him, but generally speaking, the first half of the year was fantastic. But Benchik second round, I don't know if I buy it. I think Benchik will have a very good chance at upsetting him, provided he gets through Basilashvili, because indeed you just never really know what you're gonna get from the Georgian ball basher.
Yeah,
Not a big fan of Shank's prospects to get to the forefront to be honest. Davidovich Fokina, that's already a player he's lost to twice. Struff or Aliasim just feels like a lot of toss-ups. So probably I would say Menchik or Ruud fourth round is most likely to me. And yeah, Tommy seems to have a pretty decent draw. Like by the time he gets to play Striker or Tabilo, he's already got 2 rounds in. He should be like pretty, fired up and confident. Yeah, I like Tommy Paul's chances to get to the forefront for sure here. And if the quarters, well, many different things can happen. Menchik, if his body would hold up, is also a potential quarterfinalist. Apparently, me and Vansh are just big fans of Czech tennis.
yeah. We have every reason to be. I mean, on the women's side as well. I mean, there's
Yeah, I mean Vansh has Krejcikova,
but
so
but
not
this
in this event, unfortunately.
Vondrosova, and then here, and these are
Muhova, sure, yeah.
these are three of the best talents right now in amongst all the young stars. So like, I think I'll probably go with Tommy because I don't have enough faith right now. Menchik has played so much tennis at the start of the year that like
Yeah.
I could see his body just breaking down, and I still have some questions about the forehand. I think for the most part I'm sold on every other part of his game. It's just the forehand for me sometimes can break down, but
It's the same issue as Runa, really. Like the same kind of like overextended, like drawback and stuff.
he just doesn't look
Um,
very balanced. Sometimes
Take back,
moving
I
forward.
wanted to say, I said drawback, but that's a drawback of his game, so that's kind of, suitable.
Yeah. Um, but definitely the quality is super high. So I'm probably gonna go with Tommy. I also I also wonder where he's at mentally after the loss to Felix because that was such a big match, huge opportunity missed to crack the top 10. Definitely didn't play great
What
in
is he
front of.
defending in Australia?
I think just the third round because he lost to Kecmanovic and that was another
Oh
match.
yeah, yeah, he was gonna play Carlos, but didn't. Yeah, sure. I mean, still some chances to make up for it and get that top 10 spot.
Yeah, so I'll probably end up picking him. And then in this section, I gotta say, Zverev got a very good draw. Like this is like I struggled to see how he's losing before the quarters, before the semis, maybe even.
Well, we don't
I
know
think
the exact of the exact like nature of his injury that forced him out of the United Cup, right? But
a bicep thing, but he played like a match on Rod Laver Arena with or a set with Novak, and it looked good there. So
yeah, I mean, I was just thinking it's probably just precautionary. Who can he lose to here? Probably no one in the first 3 rounds. Like Luka Pui, fine. He can play a great set against Zverev. I just don't think physically he's gonna have it for 3.5 hours, and that's what you're gonna have to play to beat Zverev here. Feels,
yeah, but then I have a lot of questions about feats for Tannen, Halis. His matchup against Humbert is not great.
yeah, yeah.
So I think maybe a good draw for Humbert to get to the fourth round. I don't think Humbert's made a fourth round.
Yeah, it's not an easy one for Fizz. Definitely the Umber flat bowling has been hurting him in the past. Just very tough with his technique to accelerate from that, and kind of just gets put on the back foot so much, gets stuck in the backhand corner. He overcame. He did overcome it obviously in Tokyo, but it was a struggle. I think Virtanen has had some issues as well recently. He has been doing like medical checkups on like his heart or something like that. I don't want to say like something general conditioning related. But yeah, I mean, these are still tough opponents for Fitz, I suppose. Anytime you get someone with big weapons, big serve, it's easier. It's probably tougher than if you're playing Roberto Carbaez Baena. Not to say that Carbaez Baena can't be dangerous in Australia, but just a very different play style. Yeah, I mean, Zverev looks pretty good for the quarters here, definitely.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, I mean, overall, like, it's hard to make predictions about like these perspective matches in the quarters, semis, and stuff. So I won't spend too much time on it. But in general, I think I'm gonna end up picking the top four seeds again. I hate doing that, but it's just like, I because I have Zverev and Paul, and I think Zverev should get through that, and then I have Alcaraz and Mahach, and I see Alcaraz winning that, so I see Alcaraz Zverev.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think the
see Sinner
freed
at all
section,
losing.
right, is one where you can make a bolder
Yeah,
call.
I think you can, and I am a little bit tempted to pick GMP to beat Fritz in the third round. I'm not gonna lie,
Me too, me too.
but I don't know if I can do it just because Fritz has shown such a good floor and he's just so reliable right now as a competitor and just
Does that matter against Gio? I mean,
I feel like he'll just find a way somehow in 5 sets. Like I just and I have questions about Medvedev as well. And if we get Fritz Medvedev,
who was the fourth round for Taylor? That was really tough too.
it was like Musetti or Brandon or Shelton.
Oh
Those
yeah,
guys I picked.
Shelton, Arnaldi, Musetti,
Yeah,
Nakashima, Mike Schack.
yeah.
um,
But Taylor should get through those.
shouted
Taylor should
from the
get through
rooftops.
anybody there. So I think I'm just backing Taylor just because he's shown me a lot, the last year. And
We're gonna have a lot of laughs about this over the next 2 weeks, definitely, about Vansh going for his bold statements again. Because no, actually, Rybakina isn't the top four seed, right?
I don't
Yeah,
really have it. I think on the women's side, I'm not gonna pick all top four.
yeah, because Rybakina isn't the top four seed. But if the top four seeds were Świątek, Sabalenka, Goff, and Rybakina, you would be picking the top four seeds. I know
No,
you,
no,
Vansh.
maybe not. Maybe
I
not.
know, I know you. But yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you that Alcaraz Zverev looks like a likely semi-final. Would love to see it after what happened last year. Just it was a fascinating matchup to analyze, and
Mhm.
their encounters I think have been very entertaining. Very reliant on the conditions generally. Like Alcaraz has won, the slow court matchups post 2020 or post 2021. I actually wanted to say, but yeah, I mean this looks pretty likely here, and Sinner is obviously one of the main favorite to get to the final. So if anything is gonna be like, and if anything wild happens, it's probably section or quarter two. And there I will be looking for some dark horses and for some chances for the underdogs.
Yeah. But in general, I think with that top four lineup, I'm still gonna end up picking Sinner just because his path to the final is just so much easier. And then you have on top of the fact that this court profile is just so good for him. Plus, he had a longer off season as well. In terms of he didn't play any exos or anything like that. Alcaraz did, and it may not end up mattering. I think most likely it doesn't matter. But you
Who
know,
has a better chance at beating Yannick in the final? Alcaraz or Zverev?
oh, Alcaraz, just because of the head-to-head momentum and also just the higher ceiling.
Yeah, I was
Um,
gonna say Zverev right
because
away, but then I was just like, nah. I mean, he beat him 3 times last year. He definitely has like some advantages
yeah,
that maybe aren't. You can't just say, oh yeah, this is it. But there are the intangibles, and yeah, I would also go Alcaraz actually, even if my initial instinct was Zverev.
yeah. So I think if the matchup actually happens, this is one where I could switch at last minute just because of the head-to-head momentum and also just depending on let's say Zverev doesn't get to the semis, or let's say Alcaraz ends up playing Djokovic, but he actually doesn't end up exerting all that much physical energy. Like there's a lot of possibilities there. So yeah, there could also be a scenario where Medvedev shows us something different. I'm not ruling that out because yeah, I'm not ready to write off Daniil yet. And but maybe that I think that match against Fritz, if it does happen, we get that 4-5 rematch of the ATP Finals match. That is one where you might be tempted to pick Medvedev. Like I think Medvedev at his best beats Taylor, but I just don't know if Medvedev is at his best right now. Like we might get 85% to Neil, and maybe that's enough for Fritz. But as of right now, I think pretty much Taylor has shown he can beat anyone except for Sinner, Alcaraz, and Djokovic. So for now, I think I'm just gonna stick with it because that's what I've seen basically since the U.S. Open. in the big events.
Um, yeah, I mean, I definitely have to start appreciating that Taylor consistency and reliability a little bit more than I have been in the past. But it's a tough one. Like third round, fourth round, I can definitely see him struggling there. So if anyone can stop him there, it's out there. And yeah, Fritz Medvedev right now, I just want to see how they play up until that point. I mean, that's also actually kind of wrong. I don't have to see how Taylor is going to play. I know how Taylor is going to play, and I know if he arrives in the quarters, I like can tell you, you know, exactly what sort of form he's going to be in. It's just more Daniel.
Yeah. All right, let's go. Let's move on to the women's because here we have Sabalenka and Goff in the same half of the draw, and then we have Świątek, Rybakina in the other half. Of course, Rybakina is not a top four seed as we established before, but since we spent a lot of time talking about the United Cup, it was always going to be the biggest question: which half is Iga going to be in? Are we going to get Iga and Coco? And this time, actually, the two favorites for the title, they're going to be playing each other in the semis if the seeds hold up.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that Sabalenka and Goff are the main two favorites for the title. Maybe pre-draw. With the draw, maybe there's some percentage changes and everything, but actually, still, I would say that's the case. Let's see who can like kind of like arrive in the final from the bottom half and whether it will be Iga. But it does seem like it's a very similar event to last year in a way because you had that Sabalenka Goff semi. It was actually bottom half, and then because of Rybakina and Świątek underperforming or underperforming, losing in losing to great performances, but still performing, not getting to the rounds that they were expected to. That's why we kind of had this lopsided event. And it feels like this is also very much the danger here. If Iga and Elena can't deliver, we might get another one of these like Sabalenka Goff semi, and then the final is a bit of a dud because the gap in quality is just a little bit too massive. It's actually we had a lot of finals like this last year too, right? Sabalenka Pegula to an extent, even though it was a pretty good straight setter. Of course, the Australian Open, especially maybe, and Roland Garros too. So where you have like one big favorite and the semifinals are usually pretty tough for them, but then the final is just you pretty much know who's gonna win.
Yeah, and obviously Sabalenka is going for three Australian Opens in a row, which has only been done, I think, 5 times in history. And the last player to do that was Martina Hingis, 1997 to 1999. So she does get three in a row. Now you're looking at a maybe an Iga-esque type domination of one major. Maybe maybe not quite to that extent, but certainly it would be a massive achievement for her.
How
And
many
here I
sets
have
has she lost in the last two campaigns?
just the one in the
Yeah.
final to Bikina in 2023. Aside from that, she's pretty much swept everybody. So it has been very dominant. But here and she's coming in with a title in Brisbane. She didn't always play her best tennis, but she still only dropped that one set in the final against an opponent she'd never played before, who was red hot. So you still have to like her chances to make it pretty deep here. Um, I think the Andreeva match is probably the most likely one. I think in the fourth round. But also there's Kudermetova, there's Lynette, there's Bushkova in the first round, who I think is actually not that easy for a player like Andreeva right now. But yeah, I think I'm also looking at Tassin Nashkova because Tassin is come with a title in Auckland, even though she didn't actually win in terms of the score, but she ended up getting the retirement from Osaka. And and then you've got obviously Nashkova, who beat Iga here last year, made the quarters. Um, and yeah, I see a lot of people hyping up the Stephens match just because they're two Grand Slam winners, and we know how well Stephens played in her prime. But I feel like it's the tail end of Stephens' career right now, and I just don't see it being competitive.
Very good encounter between them at the French a couple of years back. Probably a bit tougher to do in Australia for
So
her.
far,
Although she
so
had
far, and
Australia runs.
Sloane always plays well at Roland Garros. Actually, that's the one major where I
Oh,
think she could step
always.
in and
Last
dominate.
year did she play well? Um,
Well, I think it's her most consistent. Like
yeah,
she's almost always in the fourth round at least.
yeah. I mean, she always had results. Every like outside of Wimbledon, she's had results everywhere. But there's definitely a lot more big rounds at the French. But Australia, I know in the past, like 2000, what was it, 13, that she had
Yeah,
a big run. So it's really been a while. But yeah, I'm not really looking at that maybe right now. Pauson, Noskova, Andreeva, you were right to kind of like name the most dangerous contenders. It's just that Sabalenka gives you that sort of confidence right now that like even when there's some trouble, even when there's adversity, she's probably going to come through. I think in Brisbane, it was a good example of that. You've got Polina Kudermetova with the best week of her career, and of course she actually took a set. You've got Putintseva, who was really pushing for it in the first one. So very different play styles as well from both opponents, and yet kind of like Sabalenka always figures out a way. It will be a pretty big upset if she loses here, like before the semis, really. I don't know if I'm quite as confident, because again, we have the best of three, best of five, but actually at this very slam, I feel very strong about the top four name. Well, let's say that one of the top four names in the women's draw is going to win it. I don't think there's as much of a as much potential for an unexpected champion as we've had in some previous years.
Yeah, we'll see. Um, we've also got Shang, and who hasn't played any matches this year so far. I think she pulled off. It was like pulled out of something that, before this it was like precautionary, but
Yeah, I think she even cited fatigue or something like that, didn't she?
yeah, something like that. I don't remember what it was, but she just pulled out because she wasn't fully ready, maybe, or into longer off season. Which I still like her draw though. I will say, to get to the fourth round here, like this is not a bad section at all. These names don't really feel like the kind of form that Zhang had in the second half of last year. I feel like I might just ride with that. Of course, you've also got Ye Yuan, who can be potentially pretty tough in the third round if we get there. So maybe that's something that I'm looking at. I think she had a match like this in the third round here last year, maybe that she played a super tiebreak and then came through, and then made the final. But who else do you got here? Ashton Kruger, I'm kind of high on right now. Schneider as well is kind of pretty consistent. Vekic, I think we could see a rematch of Vekic and Shang. I think right now I'm actually going to go with Kruger. I think Kruger can get to the fourth round.
I thought the
I
quarters.
think
Okay.
anything can happen. Yeah.
I mean, the fourth round is very open. Schneider, Kruger, Vekic. Yeah, you've got at least three very good contenders in there. Schneider
And let's
maybe
not forget
hasn't
about
been.
Vondrosova as well, who
Oh
played
yeah,
well against
I
her a few
completely
weeks ago.
skipped over her name to be honest. I am gonna skip over her though in my considerations. I mean, she just retired again. I don't think
Yeah,
she's that good in
this
Australia,
wasn't.
even though she had that one. Well, I mean, she had this one run where she was stopped by Linda Fruhvirtova anyway, I think. But yeah, I think Vekic, Kruger, Schneider, these are bigger contenders here. All of them honestly same level for me at the moment.
Yeah,
Schneider, I think, didn't restart the season all that well, but it's probably just like an early blip or whatever. Zheng to the fourth round, it's a pretty comfortable draw. She is definitely like capable of just like losing to somebody here. Most of her big slam runs, they have featured at least one of these matches that you're referring to. I think last year it was one of the Wangs, right? It was a fellow Chinese in the tough
I
encounter
don't
against
remember who
her.
it was. Maybe it was. Yeah, I think it might have been. Who
Maybe
was it?
Yafan Wang actually.
Yafan. Yafan.
Yeah,
Yes.
actually
Yafan
the
Wang.
third one, yeah.
Yes.
The third sister.
Thanks for that.
Anyway, yeah, I think it was Bronzetti at the US Open one year as well, where like Kinven is looking horrible and is struggling to get to basically to find the court, but she has to fight through it, and then usually a run happens. So maybe she's gonna have one of these performances against somebody here. I don't know, but otherwise, I like her fourth round chances. I think against Potapova, maybe she had a pretty tough head to head, but it's been a while since Potapova did anything. Todoni,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of her
Mhm.
talent, but yeah, it's not the best draw, obviously. So I kind of like Kinven to the quarters here, but there's definitely like strong contenders, especially in the fourth round, that she could lose to.
Yeah, for sure. And you've got yeah. So I mean, this section right here, like a year ago, I would have said, oh, Goff Kennen. Ooh, kind of scary. Kennen peaks in the early rounds of majors, and she's definitely very capable. She's won Australian Open here before. I know that was like 5 years ago now, but still, that top level is there. She can tap into it sometimes. And you've got Fernandez. You've got the second round looks very easy for Coco, but honestly, like, doesn't matter who Coco plays right now because of the form that she's shown post U.S. Open, and also just how confident she's been in terms of patching up the parts of her game that were the forehand, second serve, other things that went wrong for her in the summer of last year. You just feel so confident in her floor and just her ability to get through these matches relatively comfortably. Even like I just Kennen for me right now is doesn't pose that much of a threat. Even if she brings her 100% level right now, I feel very good about Coco's draw and chances, and I don't think anything changed pre-draw. Even though, like names wise, she's got a lot of big names. She's got a lot of, especially in that bottom section with Muhova, Osaka. I mean, Bencic, Ostapenko. I think the biggest loser of this section is definitely Naomi, who's trying to get her form back and trying to get to the upper echelons of the game, and this is like the worst draw she could have possibly had. But for Coco, you feel like nothing's really changed pre-tournament to now.
Yeah, I mean, Naomi had two slams last year where her level was very good. And yet,
Yeah.
she actually just had to lose, really, because well, she didn't have to, but she had that match point against Iga, of course. She didn't convert it. She had the set points against Muchova to take it to the deciding set. So, despite being like a top 10 player at these events in terms of her level, she wasn't even able to get to the third round. And something like this is very possible for her too here. She gets through Garcia, she loses to Muchova, for example, or she loses to Bencic or Ostapenko. And again, we might be talking about a slab where the level was there. But yeah, it was just a little too tricky, and maybe she missed some chances again. Who knows? And yeah, I'm very, I second the sentiments about Goff. I just think looking at her draw right now, it's not that relevant to me because she just seems like she's gonna handle it all. She's been maybe the best player in the world since the Asian swing. Of course, Sabalenka still very much there too. But the fact that she just beat Iga at the United Cup must be massive for her, and especially considering, what we've been talking about on the show, that like this was a very different Świątek Goff encounter than even the WTA finals. That this was the first time you really feel like, okay, she's there and she can like kind of compete with Iga even when Świątek is hitting her best stuff for a few games. And even maybe a great comparison from last year because Goff Fernandez was going to be a third round back then. And I remember thinking, okay, this is a very good chance for Leila to potentially upset her. Of course, Fernandez lost to Parks, but right now it just doesn't feel like remotely as close, the Goff Fernandez matchup, especially as they played at the United Cup and Leila almost didn't have a shot. So I would be very surprised if Goff doesn't make it here. But there are some fun matchups in here for sure. I mean, Bencic Ostapenko, that might be my favorite round one of them all.
Yeah, that's like so 50-50. You have no idea who's winning that
It's
because there's
like
no.
both like big names, but also big names that are still going to like at least in terms of Bencic deliver tennis wise, and Ostapenko will be Ostapenko. So she always she's always the same really. But yeah, I do think it's like one of the great examples of this matchup that makes us think about history. Whereas Sabalenka Stevens is just big names, but do you really expect much from it?
Yeah, Ostapenko I always say is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. So, Bencic, yeah, Bencic, has been playing well. It's just, can she actually win a few rounds? I feel like if she gets through Ostapenko, she could make the third round. Mohova is probably going to be my pick to get out of this section, just based on the form that she's shown post Wimbledon of last year. I still probably pick her against Osaka, but I'm not that confident in it. It definitely could go either way. I like Osaka to beat Garcia this time, but it all just kind of depends if Garcia plays the kind of tennis. I mean, Garcia basically peaked twice last year, and it was both times against Naomi in Australian Open and Miami. So
You just said that
I
Ostapenko is a box of chocolates. I mean, Caroline Garcia would also fit right into Forrest Gump, so.
yeah, she's very much in that mold as well because we know how she if she plays some of her best tennis, she can play the match of the year type match like she did against Iga in Beijing in 2023. And then there's other days where she's just like so committed to that aggressive return strategy that she kind of yeah just beats herself with it, and then doesn't really have any other options, even though she actually does have them. But I think she just refuses to tap into them, which is very frustrating for me as an observer. But regardless, I think I'm picking Coco all the way. And if she does play Mahova, it's a 4-0 head-to-head for Coco, and she's never lost a set. I think there was just one 7-5 in there, but like none of the matches have even been competitive. And that's I gotta think at least one time Mahova is gonna put in an A+ performance and just you know maybe just throw the kitchen sink and it actually works. But so far, I haven't actually seen evidence of it on court, so I can't really pick her to the quarters.
Yeah, I haven't seen evidence that throwing the kitchen sink will work. Coco is just like too good on the defense, too athletic, too quick. Now she has a forehand too.
Yeah, and an offensive one at times, so just makes it so much harder to penetrate through that wall. Speaking of which, we have Badosa and Wang. I don't know why I said speaking of which. Maybe I was just thinking about the wall of China, and then all of a sudden, Wang shows up. So yeah, I believe this is Jinyu Wang. So I think actually this is a really good first round because Jinyu Wang has been playing well in the majors as of late. She made a fourth round at the U.S. Open and then also in Wimbledon run. where she beat Pagula. So I could actually see, and Badosa has been getting into some tough tussles and hasn't really gotten a ton of matches in the next couple of weeks. Like she's been playing well, but she just hasn't been, progressing for that far. So I could see that being pretty tricky. But if she does get through it, I like her chances to get to the fourth round. Um, yeah, like I think this is a pretty good section for her after that.
Yeah, I mean, Joint, definitely a very good, talented prospect. I'm thinking maybe a little too much for her right now, Pegula, though.
Yeah.
And when she gets through that, then it opens up. Samsonova, always very dangerous, but again, some similarly to Ostapenko and Garcia, just never really know whether she's going to be 150% or 10%. Kostyuk has kind of become like a little overlooked after the start of the season, hasn't been that kind to her. I wonder
Mm-hmm.
if maybe that's, not a bit too much. Of course, she made the quarterfinals last year, although we would rather forget about that quarterfinal against Coco. But also has another shot, and as you just said, I mean, she's also been very consistent at the slams the last few attempts. So
Yeah.
maybe this is another good opportunity for her. But Badosa Kostyuk in the third round would be quite a blockbuster to me. Pegula, either of them playing Pegula really. It's that section that kind of has that issue for me where Goff is gonna be in the quarters, and can you beat her is the question. And probably
Well,
most of
hopefully,
them
yeah.
won't be able to.
Yeah, I would say Pagula in the past has been tough for Coco, but then the WTA finals match happened. But I also know Pagula wasn't 100%, and then I also know that Coco is playing just so good for any opponent really matter right now. So I think I'd probably end up picking Goff and Pagula in the quarters, and then I'd go with Coco.
Who's more likely to get to the semis just in general? Like, who's more of a sure thing, Sabalenka or Goff?
I'm still gonna go with Sabalenka, just because Coco on paper does have some tougher names. Like let's say instead of Muhova, it's like Osaka, and she's just really, really feeling it. I mean,
Yeah,
she almost beat Osaka, almost beat Coco in Beijing, and Goff won the title there.
that's
Whereas for
fair. She
Sabalenka, I
does
think
have
she does
tougher
have.
names. I agree about that. I'm not really sure what my answer to that question would be, but Coco does have tougher names. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same reason kind of why I have Sabalenka just ahead of Goff in my favorites. It's just
hmm
it's just there's more of a body of work and more of a sure thing, I think. But now we go to the bottom half, which is the Rybakina section. Obviously, a lot of Rybakina questions on and off the court right now, but on court she looked really good at the United Cup for the most part, and she seems like her first two rounds here are pretty good. I mean, Emerson Jones is like a talented junior, but I watched her play a little bit against Kazakina, and I don't think Rybakina should be too concerned at this moment. Maybe Emerson in 2 or 3 years from now could be a much bigger prospect. Of course, you got Iva Jovic, who's kind of similar in that sense as well. Um, Kovanic. Yastremska is defending a ton of points. If she doesn't do well here, she's going to plummet down the rankings. Most likely, I don't see her, getting past the third round. Well, maybe even the first couple of rounds, because Lulu Sun is also dangerous, although she hasn't been winning a ton of matches, but she's definitely one to watch. Danielle Collins as well, in the bottom half. I think actually the name that I'm circling, and I do this before every major, and I'm so guilty of it, is Madison Keys. Like that's the one name that I'm looking at and going, hmm. I know she's in the final of Adelaide, and she has the same thing. She peaks before the slam, but actually in the past it hasn't. It's been okay for her. Like she won Eastbourne before Wimbledon, and she made the quarters, right, and then loses to Sabalenka. Like she's been doing well in the slams, and I feel like if there is going to be an upset, maybe it's Keys over Rabakina in the fourth round. Like you could see it.
Yeah, I very much agree with this. I mean, the entire last season, I just spent thinking, well, I had this vision, that Madison Keys was going to go huge at one of the slams. It didn't happen, although Wimbledon, you never know if she doesn't get injured.
She may
But
have won the Wimbledon title. It was like if she beats Paulini there,
yeah.
well,
And now I'm just kind of looking at this and thinking, can I go right back to this point in time? Can I just start picking Madison Keys at every slam again? And you know what? I think I can. Like the way
well,
she's
I
been
think
playing
it's I
this
think
week.
it's I think she's become pretty reliable. Like you look at her major
Yeah.
results, like every major basically now. Like since the yeah, okay, maybe the French Open she loses to Navarro in the third round there,
Yeah, that was a little unexpected, I
but
guess.
that's it.
But we never really looked that stupid last year when we were picking her to go deep every single time. Like she never really fulfilled the prophecy, but we never looked like idiots. And I don't think we'll look like idiots here. Like I would love to see that Rybakina Keys fourth round. I think it's very possible that we will see it. And yeah, I would still favor Elena, but Sure, I'm pretty big on both players here. I think their form to start the season has been amazing. They like the conditions in Australia. I like their chances.
Yeah,
There's not even like too much space for that Blinkova like upset for Rybakina. Maybe Yastremska, but as you said, I mean, it's just such a lottery whether she wins or loses a match right now.
I think I'm pretty confident in Rybakina getting to the fourth round. Actually, I'm more confident about Rybakina getting to the fourth round than Keys, only because
Yeah.
Keys is playing this week and she's played a lot of tennis. And physically, maybe her
Mm,
body might
Also,
warrant it.
like there are some tougher matches here for her. I mean, Collins obviously, Ruse second round.
Yeah. Prusa's second round is actually
Ruse almost beat Badosa at the US Open.
yeah. So yeah, Keys Rybakina is gonna be my fourth round, and I think I'll just go with Keys. I know it's like I just made the case for Rybakina, and that's like the safer pick. But Keys just has that peak level in her where I could see her beating Rybakina. Also, Rybakina hasn't made the final of a major since Australian Open a couple of years ago,
Since
and
this Australian Open 2023 against Sabalenka, yeah.
yeah,
She's definitely
and
underperformed at the slams.
you've got the Paulini section, and I gotta say Paulini has a decent draw here. Um, the first couple of rounds look pretty doable. Townsend versus Paulini could be a fun match to watch, but at the moment, I just think Paulini is still holding up after last year. She's playing well. Like she loses 2-2 to Muhova, but it's like one of the most competitive 6-2 6-2s I've ever seen. Like, and I think she will always just come unstuck against Carolina the way that matchup works, and against most of the very very top players. But her section is very good here, and I don't have too much faith in Haddad Maya right now, even though she's very capable, of course. But I might honestly go with Katie Bolter to the fourth round here.
I mean, I will go Katie Bolter to the quarters, I think. I think if there's ever a spot to like slam a Katie Bolter quarterfinal, here it is. I'm sorry. I know I kind of keep underestimating Jasmine Paolini,
Yeah, I think I just seen too much consistency from Paulini to overlook her
but like
again.
so what?
So
Bolter is also
yeah,
getting to the fourth round here, right? I mean,
I mean yeah, but like Rebecca Marino can play some good tennis. Like Kudermetova
in
can play some.
2018, yeah.
Yeah,
Kudermetova in 2021, yeah.
Erica Andreeva, like Haddad. And I don't know, like it's a tough con. And then Haddad Maya will make it really physical. And Bolter, so far hasn't performed that well in the majors. Like Wimbledon was pretty disappointing for her. Like that was a golden opportunity to get to the second week, and who did she lost in the second round there to someone she shouldn't have lost. I forget
I
who it
already
was.
made up my mind. Nothing you're gonna say right now is gonna convince me. Katie Bolter, Australian Open quarterfinalist. Here we go.
Yeah,
I mean, you
I
gotta have
mean,
some Bolter-ish,
I
peaks
mean,
in
I'd
there.
love to see it because she's already won a slam. So I mean, this would just be a bonus on top of it. So
Yeah, San Diego.
yes, all
She,
those
she might have the
disappointing.
same number of slams as Omar Jessica soon. Yeah, but anyway, if Paolini gets the quarters, I like Rybakina or Keys' chances, I guess. So it's also like one of the less interesting sections from that standpoint. But yeah, I would love to see that Bolter Paolini fourth round.
I think I'm going with Paulini versus Keys in the quarters, and I'm picking Keys to the semis.
Yeah, I would go Rybakina Paolini probably, but that's same.
Here we have Navarro Stearns right away, which jumps out, and it's definitely a really exciting first round. You've got Jabeur and Sakari potentially playing in the second round. You've got Kazakina, who's kind of a WTA 500 specialist, but has been not really delivering in the majors lately. Although she played a very good Wimbledon, just ran into. I think she made the fourth round there, but uh, Zhang is there as well. Putin I gotta say Putin is looking really good right now. Maybe she's somebody who can actually make the quarters here.
I mean, you've got her
At least
playing a
get
very
to a
tough
better than
very tough opening round though.
yeah. But if she gets through that, actually all these opponents are somewhat tough. Kessler's in good form as well. So yeah, this is actually kind of hard to pick, but Navarro hasn't been inspiring a ton of confidence with me. At the same time, she's been playing well in the majors, third round, fourth round, quarters, semis. If she beats Stearns here, it's looking pretty good. You would pick her against Sakari Jabora most likely as well. Jabora is starting to pick up her form. This is a tough section for me. Like, it's very open.
Yeah, I mean, post US Open, it seems like Emma has fallen off quite a lot.
Yeah.
So it's looking incredibly open indeed. Putintseva, Vanessian, very good opening round. Honestly, the winner might even make the quarters if everything else kind of like aligns, but it doesn't need to align. The thing is that it doesn't need to align because all the seeds are to an extent at least vulnerable. So actually, Ons Jabeur as well. Ons Jabeur quarterfinalist here.
Could happen. I mean, she played pretty well in. She loses to Mira, but she played pretty well the first 3 rounds of
Who did she
Brisbane.
lose to this week?
And this week she loses to Putin 2
Oh,
and 4
Putintseva,
in.
yeah, yeah. I think I might go for a Jabeur quarterfinal here.
I don't hate it. I think
She's
I
the
don't
best
hate it
option in
either.
the top
But
half of this section, and then bottom half, yeah, Putintseva, Vanessian, Kasatkina. It's kind of all the same for me.
yeah,
So I would probably go Jabeur quarters.
I think for me this is a little bit like Stefanos on the men's side with Navarro. Like if she looks really good against Stearns, I think I'll pick her to the quarters. But if she, but she could very much lose in the first round or get to the quarters. Like I feel like this, like both things could happen. It would be very interesting to see Jabor against Navarro in the third round if we get that. And then we've got the ego section, which I've been hearing some mixed opinions definitely online. A lot of people are saying this is a very good draw. It's pretty easy. It's the best draw she could have hoped for, and I'm not quite in that camp because I still think the third round is tricky. Like could be Alexandrova, could be Anisipova, but the first couple of rounds are fairly good. I mean, they're not like the easiest opponents either. Like Siniakova is, almost always close to being seeded, and she's definitely very crafty and just very talented in general. But it doesn't really kind of have the aggressive mindset like some of the other players, and that's better for Iga. Stramkova had a very good end to last year, but her form right now so far this year has dropped off a little bit. So, what do you think about her section overall? Because a lot of people pointing to the third round, fourth round potentially Kalinskaya, but I think I'm mainly looking at the third round.
I mean, I think if someone says it's the easiest ever, then they're probably just basing this on last year because they're remembering that, whatever that was, and they're thinking, okay, it's easier, but it was never going to be as tough as last year. Like that was too much. And this is just solid. I don't think that, there's like any like serious danger right away. And this is kind of also based on the fact that you would actually expect Iga to make some improvements by now. You had that kind of like tactical masterclass in the second set and as end of first set against Rybakina, which shows you she might be a little less vulnerable to someone like Alexandrova or Anisimova, but nonetheless, these are tough opponents. Alexandrova, especially, of course, has been capable of beating Iga in the past in faster conditions or medium fast conditions, maybe in this case. Kalinskaya beat her in Dubai last year. Kind of, again, very easy to see what she can do in order to get Iga into some trouble at the very least. I still like Iga's chances to get to the quarters, but it's going to require a solid level. It's going to require good tactics. It's just going to require her to be not just, sleepwalking through this draw, but rather on top of it from maybe not the get-go. But she will definitely need, yeah, just to show something here. It's not going to be one of these like Roland Garros first weeks where we're just not watching the matches almost because they are 6-1, 6-1. I don't think that's really a possibility here. But I do think she's going to reach a pretty deep stage of this event at least.
Yeah, I feel a lot more confident in her making a deep run this year than I do last year, and I do think if she gets through that third round, Alexandrova or Anisimova. I think the advantage about those names versus somebody like Rybakina is that they're just so much worse in terms of their movement. So if Iga is able to neutralize that first shot and play the kind of tennis she did at the United Cup, then that gives me a lot of confidence that she should be able to handle Alexandrova. And she does have mostly wins against her. I mean, there's the Miami match, but and I think maybe one more before 2022. But
No, but a lot
for
of
the
them
most
were
part,
tough though. Like
yeah,
it's not like it was
it's been
ever
tough
easy
wins,
against her.
but it's like but at least she knows she can beat her on these quick courts.
Um, I think
But
she
it's
knows
like
she can beat anybody on the planet. It's
yeah,
not quite that.
but it's like the same mold as Rybakina, but just the third round version. So I think it's definitely manageable. Let's put it that way. Like if she comes out and she loses in straight sets to Alexandrova in the third round, that would be very disappointing.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think that by this point, another third, fourth round exit at a hardcourt slam it's just not what Iga wants. It's not why she hired Vinfi said. It's not why she's just, intending to keep developing her game in these areas that so far that haven't been that amazing for her. So yeah, I think whereas last year it was still like, okay, she had a tough draw. She played some very entertaining matches. Let's see how the rest of the season goes. We are sort of slowly arriving at a moment where she kind of needs a result here. I'm not saying that result has to be a title or even a final, but just
But just
something
a semi.
more than yet another third round, fourth round when even the quarters at the US Open didn't really feel like a step forward considering how that quarterfinal against Pagula looked.
Yeah, for me, I need to see at least a semi-final or final from Iga this
I think
season.
a semi is yeah is probably already like a good estimate of, it would be great if she gets to something like this because that would already signify at least a bit of progress.
Yeah. Counting Sky for me, I know she's the highest seed, but I don't have a ton of faith in her actually getting to the fourth round. It's mostly injury related. Body sometimes doesn't quite hold up. A little bit inconsistent. So I think I'm gonna go with Azarenka because she's proven she can still make runs to the fourth round of majors, and she's still around 20 to 25 in the world thereabouts almost every week. Pretty reliable in terms of that way. So I think I'm probably gonna end up picking her to the fourth round, and then that's definitely a much more comfortable matchup for Iga.
Yeah, I mean Karinskaya also had a big run in Australia. I understand that her form right now isn't exactly, at the top and it isn't as
Yeah,
good as it was back then, but she's still very dangerous on courts like this, I think. And
she's
it's
a
not
better
like her draw
quarterfinal
is that
bounce, right?
tough.
She
Yeah,
made she made the quarters last year.
it's
Yeah,
not like her draw is that tough. Like the first for the first three rounds for her, if she's playing well, she really can just like get through this quite easily, regardless of form. So it might be Kalinskaya in the forefront. And yeah, again, it would be an opponent where Iga has to show something. Like it's not just something she can sleepwalk through.
yeah, for sure. That's true. So I guess if you want to make some more predictions, I think generally I'm sticking kind of with Sabalenka and Goff in the quarters. I mean in the semis rather. Rematch of last year. I think that's where it gets really tough. I think I like Coco in that matchup now. I mean she leads that head-to-head 5-4. She's a very different player than she was a year ago when she pushed Sabalenka to two pretty tight sets. Was up 6-5 30 love in the first set they played there. She's just beaten her at the WTA finals. She should have beaten her in Wuhan if not for the double faults. So I think I'm gonna back Coco to get to the final. But it's not easy for sure. It could go either way.
Yeah, sure. I mean, somewhat optimistically, maybe based on like, well, not one event, but for the most part based on one event, because I think there was still a big jump between what Coco was doing at the WTA finals
Yeah.
and then the United Cup, especially in the sense that the forehand has developed. But just like we said that with Iga in the matchup, like it's opening up new avenues for her. In the Sabalenka matchup, it would be the same. Just kind of can go blow for blow with her a little bit more easily. Doesn't basically have to just be constantly on the defense as she was. Even in the US Open final, she won, but also in the Australian Open semi-final that she lost last year. So it seems like it will again be a pretty different matchup if we get the same forehand hitting from Coco as we did at the United Cup. I think that's one is very, very tight, and probably the winner of that is the tournament favorite. But I would like to see a semi-final run at least from Iga, and I think we probably will get it.
Yeah. I mean I have Eva playing Madison Keys in the semis and then I think I think she can get to the final. It kind of depends on that. I mean, the third, fourth rounders is pretty tricky. I'm not saying the semis are going to be easy, but she much rather play Keys than Rybakina for sure.
Yeah, I would say if it is keys in the semis, which is not looking that likely, but let's assume, then it
Yeah.
wouldn't be like that much tougher than the previous two, three rounds. So
Hmm. Right now, who do you think Ego would have the most trouble against? Would it be Coco or would it be Arena? Let's say the newer Coco, the new Coco versus Arena.
still, I don't know. I mean, last year we had that match with Sabalenka in Cincinnati, probably a bit faster than here, but that was a bit rough.
Yeah. But at the same time, yeah, I mean Coco when it's just two of the best movers, and then it's kind of tough to find openings, and then it became more of a hitting contest. I mean, if it's more of a straight up hitting contest, a lot of times it is between Arena and Ika, and it's just like blow for blow, really high intensity. Whereas against Coco, it's like all of a sudden you've got to find many different ways to try to win points and break through that wall when Coco is hitting the forehand as big as she is. So you can make an argument either way, but I think you're right that the winner of the Coco and Arena semi is the favorite for the tournament, and I'm probably still gonna end up picking one of them. I think I'll end up going with Coco for the title, but that's mostly just based on the form that we've seen, and it's not exactly a very bold pick.
Yeah, I don't think it really matters a great deal who you're picking there at the moment. Like both of them are clearly serious contenders. Both of them are clearly like the top two for the time being. And yeah, it's just by this point, it's just really subjective and like also kind of personal preference. But yeah, if Iga gets to the final against either of them, I will most likely, maybe it will change during the event, but I will most likely be looking at it as like, okay, she's done what she basically had to do this, or not had to do, but like she's done basically everything we would expect. Now it's only a bonus if she can get this done. Of course, she has a perfect record in slam finals, but it's 80% Roland Garros.
Yeah. I think both Iga and Coco have a very good record in finals. And I think Goff is 9-1, and the only loss was to Iga in the French final, and then Iga's like 22-4. So both very good records overall. But with that, yeah, I think that about does it for our draw preview. We went through pretty much all 8 sections in great depth. So some of y'all may have the draw memorized by now. So, but we'll we'll reconvene at some point. I think during the third and fourth rounds. Look ahead to the second week. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about in terms of the actual tennis then.
Or maybe Świątek and Alcaraz both lose in the opening round and will reconvene very quickly, but obviously that's not an outcome we're expecting here.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so you'll most likely hear from us in a week's time, barring some news that needs to be uh, that's like unforeseen in some way. Then we'll definitely do a podcast earlier.
Hopefully
But
not, because
yeah,
most of the time these sort of news tends to be rather negative rather than positive.
yeah, it means there's probably something wrong. That's
Yeah.
gonna something. But yeah, that's why it's like gonna be an emergency podcast, most likely. But with that, yeah, hopefully this was good for you guys. Let us know how it hopefully it looks nice on YouTube. I think it definitely is good to have a visual when you're doing these drop reviews. And you guys know where to find us now. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks again, Damien.